Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review and comparison of Zircon stud sensors. Pretty much the last couple, I guess, decades or so, all stud sensors were actually manufactured by Zircon. They actually patented the method that's used, known as a capacitance interference method of detecting things behind walls. Really how these work is they have a couple plates, it looks like antennas, and essentially kind of forms a capacitor. So it's running a alternating frequency through those plates, and then it kind of calibrates itself, and then as you move across a wall and there's a stud or something, then it creates a change in the voltage, and then it detects that as a stud and of course displays it as dots. All of these and many nicer ones have what is an AC voltage detection. This is pretty simple because the circuit sees that there's for some reason a 60 or 50 or 60 hertz repeating frequency, and so it knows that that would be related to alternating current in wires, and that's how they detect the AC and let you know. Of course, the deep scan, which many of these have, just means that it increases the sensitivity of these units. These units have really been hit or miss for a lot of people. They don't work super well through heavy plaster walls or lath and plaster just because there's so much material there. And people just aren't patient enough with them. And that's one of the real big issues with these, is that they really have to be moved pretty darn slowly to really work properly. When you do that, they do actually work. I've had so many people say that those things don't work, and I just prove it right in front of their eyes by holding it straight and moving it nice and slowly and consistently. And I'll demonstrate in various fashions here in this video, but let's go ahead and talk about these 6 models. These are what I would call the top 6 models released by Zircon in the last few years. They may have just released yet an either newer, higher model than what would be this i65 up in the corner, but these are all pretty darn nice ones. And it's surprising they have so many different types of stud sensors, since they all basically do the same thing, but they're just trying to make different stud sensors at different price points. We have essentially some older ones, although this model right here is older, it's still sold as the same thing. These more rounded body ones are the newer generation. Of course, the square body ones are the older generation. And we'll be able to compare newer ones against slightly older ones, just to see how they perform. Now what we have is a Stud Sensor Pro SL, we have the E30, and we have an E50. These 3 would be edge finding, as well as this Zircon, as well as this Contractor Multi-Scanner Pro would also be edge finding. And then we have 2 center vision or center finding ones, and these are designed to where they're kind of estimate where the center of what you're scanning is, and they're really calibrated to 1.5" material. So if you for some reason have 4x4s or something behind the wall, these will find the edge to about 3/4 of, they'll find the center, but it will only be within 3/4 of an inch from each edge, because it won't really know that it's a wider than 1.5" piece of lumber. But these you can still find the center just by moving this back and forth and finding the midpoint. This multi-scanner 1-step, and then of course the newer generation i65 1-step, are both the nicest ones. However, this multi-scanner older one is the only one that had a backlit screen, and I really appreciated that, and I'm not sure why they got rid of that feature, but this is the one I use most just because of that option. All these have little beepers or make sounds when you find the studs, and many of them either on the display or have a separate LED to show you that there's AC in there, as well as a true cal, which lets you know that the sensor is ready to use. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at how these might function, and we'll just pop some batteries in these. One thing I do like about the newer ones is that they don't have the traditional snap-on. They all use 9-volt batteries. The newer ones just have normal terminals, so you can just pop a battery in just like that, and it's super easy to use. And how these would operate is you put it against the wall, vertical, flat against the wall, and you press and hold it. It'll beep a little bit, and then you'll see that the true cal is on and it's ready to go. Then as you pass a stud, then as a stud passes through, it will find one edge, and as you move past it, it will find the other edge. And so all you do is find this edge, and then this edge, and it has a little light that will actually It really complains a lot sometimes when you're actually not against the wall. But you can see it also has a little LED which shines a light right where you need to mark, and I do appreciate that as well. And then these all work the same way. These are kind of nice just because they have nice bright LEDs and are easy to see. Let's look at the next ones. As we can see in here, all these are pretty good about having putting in 9-volt batteries. And then this is just one of the newer ones. It's a little more ergonomic, although it's not as flat. It doesn't have an option for a belt clip. And I don't think it's quite as durable, but it is still pretty nice. And this does not have a deep scan mode, but it does have a ready light. And so these are a little bit, some people like these a little bit better just because they're a little bit more modern. And it also has a little light, and if you can see there, it actually shines a little arrow shape. So these are actually pretty cool because of that. And of course it does have a little light for AC scan. Here we go. As we move up, they stop using LEDs and they go with a true LCD screen, and you get a little bit more granularity. So you can see how this works. It just allows them to get a more, it's not as any more steps. It just allows it to look cooler because they have a screen in there now. These older units were a little bit more annoying because the battery covers were harder to pull out. You had to pull the tab and kind of get the cover out of there, which it doesn't like, and then they use these wires. So they've totally changed from this system. Even though some of these older ones, for some reason, I've had better luck with than some of the newer ones. It really depends on the situation. I think the newer ones are ultimately too sensitive. So this was their contractor pro grade one. And it's still just an edge finding. It just has a wider screen that's a little bit louder. And you can see that this one has more steps. So the professional version would have about 6 levels versus only 4 levels. It also has several modes, such as a deep scan, one where you're just using it as an electrical detector to tell if a wire's live, which is actually pretty handy. And then it has a metal option where it will change its attenuation so you can use it to find metal studs and metal frame buildings. Here we go. Let's go and look at the multi-scanner one-step center vision. This was the best or the most expensive of the older models. And even the newer models don't have quite the features. So this is my go-to one, primarily because it has center vision, which I like, but it has a nice backlit screen, as you can see. And then if we move across here, it's a bit coarser. But it's kind of interesting that the animation kind of virtually shows. But it's only calibrated to 1.5 inches, which is kind of funky. So it's still just an edge finding. It just said they have offset the display to estimate where the center of an 1.5 inch stud might be. And so that's the deal with center vision ones, is they're just edge scanners that they offset, but if oftentimes they're a little funky and you're on the edge, so you still have to go back and forth and kind of use them like an edge finder. And finally, for the i65, which is their current top model, still edge finding, just no backlight. I will have to say that the newer version, because it has a better chips in it, but these do have little processors in them, it does work smoother. It really does work nice and smoothly. This one is all automatic, so this one does the... I'm not actually, to tell you the truth, looking online, it doesn't really appear that this is advertised as the deep scan, although they may just not do that anymore. This does have the AC, and due to the nature of the circuitry, they just may not offer that option because it just automatically detects any as deep as it can, as well as any metal studs. The one real issue with these is when there is power wires in the wall and it starts displaying the AC symbol, that does interfere with it, and it does seem to have a much harder time finding the studs when there's wires in the wall. But all you have to do is move it up or down just to get a little bit further away from the wires, and then it should find the stud pretty reliably. The other thing is all these have these pads, so they'll run a little bit more smoothly when you're using a wall, but half the time I find they catch for some reason, and other people do too, and you can just peel them off if you don't like them or they start interfering a bit too much. One last thing I was going to do in this review is show you inside just to see how they're built and how simple they really are. I was going to do demonstrations of actually finding studs in a wall, but it's not really any different than what I just demonstrated with my hand. I'd be running across a wall and you'd see the display show where the stud is. And so I felt that my hand was just as good as a wall for demonstration purposes for this video. If we get inside, say this one, which is by far the easiest to take apart, the Stud Sensor SL, they are super simple inside. It's really surprising. It's just like a little radio antenna. We'll just pop that open, and this is all that's inside a stud sensor that has deep scan and AC scan and everything else. And then that's all it is. It's actually kind of, I'm surprised they're built pretty nicely. All the LEDs are held by this nice structure. So this thing is definitely drop rated. There's a little forward LED bent down so it shines against the wall. They're really nice and bright. There's your little speaker. There's a little activation button. And a couple processing chips, and not a whole lot of other circuits on here. As far as discrete components, we have one and then a couple capacitors, whatever that is, a resistor, or it looks like it may be a capacitor too. So it's surprising how simple these are. And then on the back you can see that's what this is. There's their QA mark to show that it works. But there's just these panels, and you have one wire that goes to these two bars. They're actually connected on the top. And then you have this wide panel, and it just runs a radio signal, and then whenever something comes across and starts to interfere with that radio signal, it can detect the transition when it starts getting to this side. So when you go from side to side, it detects that transition area. And that's really how simple they are, and it's known as being capacitive based. And they were patented for, 20 years. And so that's why Zircon is so popular. They're the ones who own the patent on it, and they weren't very good about licensing it. That's why there's not very many other off-brand stud sensors out there on the market, if you notice. I think all their patents have run out now, so they're starting to come out. But Zircon really dominated the market for a long time, kind of like Dyson did with vacuums. So anyway, I just wanted to show you inside these and just kind of give you a quick rundown of a lot of the most common Zircons, including many that you'll still see in the stores today. And to tell you the fact that they are pretty nice with the newer ones, but to tell you the truth, as far as all the products that they've made, and I have it here, is the older, more square multi-scanner one-step is pretty much the best one because it has the backlight, and I don't know why nobody else has done that. And to give you the part number on this one, these are all made in Mexico, I believe. They don't even put a part number on their scanners. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching. Please subscribe. Catus Maximus out.